All right, man, peace. So, as you brothers know, I'm on record as stating that the hashtag #MeToo movement was just the opening salvo in an attempt to socially engineer society, particularly socially engineer society's men. This is going to be one of the main mechanisms that they use to slowly, incrementally try to get men to accept that women are not just quote unquote equal to them, but that they're above them. It's one of the main tenets of Marxism. And one of the main agents of Marxism is a man named Jackson Katz. You brothers should be familiar with him because you'll probably be seeing him a lot more on television. He is a social engineer out of Massachusetts. He was trained by a man named Douglas Kellner, who, when you do research on Douglas Kellner, last name K as in kite, Ellner, you'll find that he attended a school in Germany known as the Frankfurt School. The Frankfurt School is a school for critical theory, basically new wave Marxism. I always tell you, brothers, that it's always going to go back to the same fountain. This is why I harp on quote unquote left-wing ideologies. Brothers, please understand, left-wing is only code talk for Marxism. Marxism is code talk for Luciferianism. That's all it is. Okay, certain people might say, well, how come you don't talk about right wing? How come you don't talk about conservatism? Because conservatism does not try to tap into the so-called black consciousness. Once again, my channel is directed towards the so-called black man. So I address things that I know are directed at him to continue to misinform and disinform the so-called black man. Because as we all know, one of the main credos of this society is that the black man is an excuse maker and that he does not look towards himself to solve his problems. I agree. I agree that the so-called black man spends too much time pointing fingers at other demographics. When you do that, you give them power over you. So let's please keep that in mind. So now let's see what Mr. Jackson Katz has to say.
The Me Too movement is not only bringing the issue of sexual harassment to light, but also highlighting what role men have in the discussion. All right.
Remember, brothers, the modern day liberal female is a pawn. So they're getting puppeted by their sponsors being the left-wing power structure, particularly the international bankers, which fizzles down to high-level financiers like George Soros, etc. And they have their agents that operate in America. Many of the top left-wing professors, they go and they get trained in England or Germany. Then they come back to America and they infiltrate the university system. And they teach predominantly females, but a lot of males, to go out into society and indoctrinate people with this modernized form of critical Marxist thought, to make people believe that the females of America and Western civilization are victims, and to try to guilt trip men.
Alex Wagner recently spoke with a group of 5 accomplished men about the responsibility they feel to address sexual harassment.
Now, brothers, you see that so-called black man at the bottom? That is a NASA astronaut named Leland Melvin. I was going to do a feature on him a while ago. He's an MK Ultra victim. I have no doubt about that. He talked about his fascination with a cartoon character named Curious George, who was a cartoon ape. That right there is an MK trigger. But if I ever do a feature on him, I'll go far deeper into the issue regarding Mr. Leland Melvin. Let's see what they have to say here.
And gender equality. One of them was producer Judd Apatow.
Is it awkward when you confront another man about sexual harassment, Judd?
I don't think so. I mean, when you run a television set, you have a lot of employees, and you're really trying to create an environment where everybody there feels comfortable.
And that's the point. Let me say this, and I find myself saying this incessantly because I know that, when people come on my channel, oftentimes their brains are acclimated to thinking and perceiving things a certain way. Particularly people in Western society, they think almost strictly emotionally. So when they hear me say certain things, they may automatically emotionally associate my statements with, oh, well, he co-signs women being sexually assaulted and abused. No, it's not about that. I address things on a three-dimensional perspective. And oftentimes, you'll find that one of the main techniques that they use to try to indoctrinate people to think a certain way is the Trojan horse mechanism. They'll take an issue that is pretty clear-cut and obvious, such as brutality of a human being, and they'll try to turn it into an issue that's focused on a gender. Sexual abuse, sexual assault, sexual harassment, those are issues that are clear-cut. You don't sexually assault, abuse, or insult even anyone, no matter their so-called race or their so-called gender. There's a certain level of respect that you have for another human being. Now, the truth is the truth. There are certain truths that are spoken that are going to naturally offend people, and that's okay. But there's a difference between offending someone because of a truth that's spoken and deciding that you're going to infringe upon their human dignity. That's what rape does and sexual assault does. They're trying to make this issue strictly about women. And let me say this. Yes, the woman, because they're weaker physically, are more prone to being sexually assaulted, harassed, what have you. But that is why the convention was set up, for them to be protected by their husbands. When you have a female independence movement, that creates a dynamic now where the woman is isolated. She's not protected. And that is at her own preference. So now what they have to do is they have to double back and try to convince men that since they have decided to swear off the protection of men, now it's in a man's best interest to be reprogrammed into believing that they should no longer be guided by any type of an urge to approach women or to be attracted to a woman overtly. Remember, they want to package all that together and make you believe that there's no differentiation between a man hitting on a woman and a man grabbing a woman and pulling her into an alley and raping her. Why is that? Because they want the woman to have the sole decision in whether or not she establishes a relationship with a man. I say all that to say this. On these jobs, there are women who sexually harass men just as much as men harass women. I know that for a fact. There are women who approach men sexually just as much as men approach women. So instead of them addressing the issue as we have to establish laws and doctrines and even credos that reinforce people respecting each other's boundaries, it becomes, how are we going to stop men from harassing women? That's a way to reprogram the man, to make him more docile. And that is against the nature of the man, because the man he's created to be a protector of himself and of his family. But the female independence mentality runs contrary to the establishment of the family. So point being is this: something is going to give. Something's got to give. And once the man figures that out, many of these liberal females are going to be in big trouble. That's what that boils down to.
That if they have an issue, they can go to the people who run the set and it will be taken care of. It really is one of those situations where I think the head people set a tone.
For Dick.
Yes, and the head people are supposed to set a tone for everybody. Whenever you join a corporation, you get a document that tells you what to do and what not to do. There's never a point where he should have to go up to a man and say, hey, dude, you should stop harassing her. That's why you have conventions and platforms that are set up within any corporate structure where you go and report, hey, this person is being unprofessional. That's all. What they're trying to do is they're trying to create this element where men are supposed to feel like they have to be watchdogs over women. Look, once you establish that you believe that you're independent and that you're an autonomous entity unto yourself, you're pretty much on your own. The modern day man does not owe you a damn thing. You have declared that you are independent and that you're equal to a man. So you really have no business trying to stipulate anything to a man other than your husband. That's how that goes. And that's why I say this on this channel all the time. I tell a lot of you brothers, the only female that you should really be trying to speak to is the woman that you're dealing with in a relationship and the women in your immediate family. These random women, leave them alone, because they're getting their minds corrupted and polluted by a lot of this jargon and this aimless nonsense and rhetoric that's being promoted and pushed and propagated on television.
For decades, author and educator Jackson Katz has called on the men to set the tone and speak out. He delivered this message in a popular TED Talk called Violence Against Women. It's a men's issue. That talk has received more than 3.5 million views.
There's so many men who care deeply about these issues, but caring deeply is not enough. We need more men with the guts, with the courage, with the strength, with the moral integrity to break our complicit silence and challenge each other and stand with women, not against them.
Now, do you see the psychological maneuvers that he's using is very similar to the if you see something, say something propaganda that was started here in New York after the 9/11 quote-unquote terrorist attacks. It's the same mentality, a lot of fear-mongering. It's an attempt to create a civilian police force for females. Once again, it runs contrary to the natural human inclination to instruct people to understand that there are repercussions for their actions. That's what you have to try to instruct everyone, both male and female, in a civilized society. That when you decide that you're going to declare your independence, there are added responsibilities. When you're a child and you live at home with your parents, you know that there are certain things that they're going to provide for you. But now when you decide that you're going to strike out on your own, now you must pay your own bills, pay your own way, your rent. You must purchase food for yourself. You must make sure that you upkeep your home. That's the trade-off for independence. Same thing with the female. She has declared her independence, so now she can no longer expect for men to act as protectors. They're trying to create a convention where the female can do whatever she wants and still expect to receive the protection from a man as she did in antiquity all the way down to about 60, 70 years ago. Doesn't work like that. You've made your bed, now you must lie in it. And this guy here, he's a charlatan.
Against them.
Jackson Katz, the founder and president of MVP Strategies. He's provided sexual harassment and violence training for several sports teams and the military. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's a men's issue. What does that mean?
It means that historically people have seen issues like sexual harassment and domestic violence and sexual assault as women's issues that some good men help out with. But a big part of my work is helping people to think differently about this subject. And I would say that these aren't women's issues that good men help out with. They're actually men's issues. Men have an incredibly important role to play. Men are committing the vast majority of the abuse, the harassment, and the violence. And until men stand with women as their partners and allies in this work, we're only going to be cleaning up after the fact.
Now, I wonder what his definition of harassment is. He states that men are committing the vast majority of harassments and sexual assaults, so on and so forth. I wonder if he's including the massive amounts of female teachers that are engaging in sexual relationships with male students, with little boys. I wonder if he's factoring in the hundreds of thousands of females every year in America who are executing abortions, oftentimes without the knowledge of the man who has impregnated them. I'm sure people will say, oh, well, these men don't care. Many men want a woman to have an abortion. Abortion is big business in America. When I say big business, you have females who are sleeping with 3-4 different dudes, and they'll tell all 4 dudes that this is your baby, so I want you to pay for the abortion. They'll take the money from 4 different dudes and go get an abortion done. Or hell, not even be pregnant. I wonder if that counts in his in any of his metrics. I wonder if he's factored in how many females are claiming that a man is the father of their child, and the man is dumb enough to trust one of these females, and he spends 18 years of his life investing his emotions and his intellect into the maintenance of that child, and come to find out the child is not even his. Sexual harassment and sexual assault or gender-based maltreatment is not just about putting your hands on a woman in a violent way or raping them. There's a lot of nuance to it, and unfortunately, there is an agenda to try to break down men into believing that the female is above them and that it is in a man's best interest to put the woman over him.
We need to do a whole lot more.
So if I'm a man, which turns out I am.
Barely. You're a man in title only. In title only.
And I'm not doing anything, and I might think, well, what's my role? So how am I supposed to think differently?
You see, they're trying to implement, like how they call it white guilt. They're trying to implement a form of male guilt on all men. But it's not going to work. It's not going to work because anyone who pays attention to the female brain, female mind, knows that the woman by nature is a bluffer. Females live in a delusional world in general, and I don't give a shit who don't like what I'm saying right now. In general, females live in a delusional world. They lie to themselves, and then they want to see if they can get you to believe the lie that they've convinced themselves to believe. And then if they can get some fool to believe their bullshit down the line when the truth, inevitably comes out, they say, well, you were the one who blah, 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 blah. That's the woman's way of saying that you were dumb enough to believe me. Once again, brothers, the woman is a child until about 45. That's when they start to mature. That's why they have to be chaperoned and guided over and guarded over. The reason why there's so much confusion and loneliness is at an all-time high. Over in Britain, this chick, the prime minister, what's her last name? May. She had to declare a minister of loneliness. And all that is because of feminism and the breaking down of ancestral and ancient forms of gender roles. When you have gender roles, that simplifies everything. But through Marxism, they have convinced both the genders that they're equal. When you tell two parties that they're equal, what are they naturally going to do? They're going to come into conflict because they're going to want to see who's greater. They no longer want to complement each other. Now they want to conflict with each other. They want to compete. That's the problem here in America and in Western society in general. And it's not going to end. It's only going to get worse.
All men, I think, at all levels of society and whatever their sphere of influence, have to make it clear to the people around them that abusing women in any way, verbally, emotionally, physically, sexually, is unacceptable, not just because it's illegal and they're going to get in trouble, but because the peer culture doesn't accept it, other men as well as women don't accept it. This is a message that adult men need to be sending, not just to each other, although that's true, but to young men and boys.
Yes, reindoctrination, reprogramming, which is a common theme amongst Marxists. This man is a Marxist. He just cannot tell you that on television. As I already stated, his teacher is a man named Douglas Kellner. You can look him up. Douglas Kellner was trained at the Frankfurt School over in Germany, which specializes in modernized Marxist critical theory. This person here, Mr. Katz, he was the first man to attend a women's study class, take or minor in a women's study class in Amherst, Massachusetts. So just the fact that he was the first man to minor in that course, in that school, tells me that he most likely is a plant. Okay? And I'm not saying that what he does is totally off-putting. Many men do have to understand that there are boundaries between you and the woman. You can't just put your hands on a woman and rape her. That's nonsense. All right? That's a form of barbarity. In a structured society with ordinances, you understand that there's a proper way to do things. And for the most part, most rapists and men who decide that they want to assault women sexually, it's normally based on some issue that they have from childhood. Some unresolved issue that they have to come to terms with. Because most men understand that 99.9% of women ain't even worth raping. Most of these bras ain't shit any damn way. No disrespect. You have some good women out here, but most of them in this society ain't worth raping. You got to grab a broad and rape her. You know how many of these bras out here throwing their pussies around like frisbees? Give me a break.
Who have to hear it from men as well as women that the way to treat women, treating women with respect is not an option. It is mandatory. It is just hot.
Well, treating people with respect is not an option. It's mandatory. You have to treat people with respect. The woman is equal, so she should not want to be singled out for her gender. She should allegedly, she wants to be treated just like a man is treated, right? So the message should not be how to treat women. It should be how to treat human beings.
It's how you treat people with respect and dignity. And if you don't do it, you're going to be in trouble, not just, again, with the authorities, but with your friends, with your peers, with your teammates, with your classmates, with your colleagues. If we can change the social norms in male culture that allow this behavior to go on, you're going to see a significant diminution, because it's not about individual sick men who are doing this. A lot of the men who are committing these acts of abuse and harassment are otherwise normal men.
So now, did you see what he did there? He said it's not about sick men that are doing this. He's attacking what he calls the quote unquote normal man. In other words, he says it's a culture. He wants to address the culture. So every man must be reindoctrinated according to him. That's what he's stating. Okay. This is why I call it a social engineering program. So by no means is he looking for perpetrators. He's not looking for criminality. He's looking to change the germ of conduct that is implanted in every little boy. He wants every little boy to understand that it's more profitable to grow up to be a simp. And when you end up in court with some woman that has lied to you from the start of the start of your damn relationship, you there thinking that the little boy, the little girl is yours, and it's not. It's okay. It's all right, because you're respecting that woman. You have to respect that woman no matter what.
You said they're mostly normal men.
That's right.
Perpetrators outside of this are normal men in all situations.
That's right.
What do you mean by that? Because what is our perception? What do you mean?
The perception, I think, is that some, Freddy Krueger-like twisted character is committing these acts of aggression or abuse
Look, no, the perception is not that some Freddy Krueger character is committing rapes. For the most part, rapists are castigated in this society. It's actually men who are making up most of the rape laws. And by the way, you can look at this person's face and you can see that he's on some type of drug, most likely legal and illegal. He looks like he's done his fair share of lines of cocaine, allegedly. Okay, and also looks like he's most likely on Ritalin or something like that. But would not shock me at all if he's a pill popper. All right, if somebody were to investigate him, get into the nitty gritty on this character. He's certainly mentally unstable. Please understand that medication is a huge thing amongst many of these so-called professors. Remember, the professors are basically modern day witches. When I say witches, like wizards, or what they call magi. Their job is to instruct the students who are initiated into the craft at what you call universities on how to spellcast, which means that they look at themselves as veritable gods, right? When they consider themselves gods, it means they have to have all the answers. The pressure becomes too much, and then they end up getting caught up in drug use and alcoholism. Just looking at this man's face, I can see that he's caught up in that.
It's like on college campuses, rapists are some monstrous individuals. They're normal guys. Most guys who commit rape on college campuses are otherwise normal guys. They go to...
Nobody who's committing rape is a normal guy. So he's trying to fearmonger. He's trying to install or instill some type of a Gestapo mentality where you have to just watch out for everybody.
Go to class or they don't go to class. They're in fraternities or they're not. They're athletes or they're not. They're just normal guys. But the question that begs is, why are otherwise normal guys doing this, and what does it mean to be normal in this society? In other words, if it's not just crazy individuals, but actually much broader than that, then it implicates the various institutions of the society that shape what we expect from men and boys.
I'm really curious because you pioneered this bystander training. What does that mean? How do you do it?
She's asking that because she wants to use his techniques to raise her own son. And if you raise your children with a basic understanding of how to respect another human being, you should not have to worry about that. You don't have to go to the extremes of trying to implement any form of gender worship or the veneration of the feminine principle in your male children. You're only hampering them. Right? It's really, this society is trying to install a simp program in all these little boys. Why is that? Because they know that the court system is totally geared towards the female. So this guy here, he clearly has an issue with the woman. And we live in a society where the people who have an issue with certain platforms or certain paradigms, they're the ones who are doing the teaching. We live in a society where people who can't even maintain a relationship are giving advice on relationships. People who don't know anything about any type of spiritual aspect or anything historical are trying to teach about religions or the Bible or the this or the that. This is the society that we live in.
Well, the bystander approach is a way to move beyond the perpetrator-victim binary. In other words, instead of focusing on men as perps and women as victims, or women as perpetrators and men as victims, or any combination.
I'm sure that hurt you to say. Women as perps? I know you don't believe that, sir.
it focuses on everybody in a given peer culture as what we call a bystander, which is a friend, a teammate, a classmate, a colleague, a coworker, right?
Almost like an honor code.
Yeah, honor code, sure. But it's giving people tools to challenge and interrupt abusive behavior when they see it, and not just at the point of attack.
Give us an example. Give us an example.
You're a guy and you're hanging out with a group of guys and there are no women in the room. And one or two of the guys start making sexist and degrading comments about girls or women. Instead of laughing along or being silent in the face of that, it's interrupting that by saying, hey, that's not funny, man. You can't talk about like that. It just...
Well, you know what, sir? That's not your job. People have the right to have their own form of humor, their own sense of humor. When you're talking about the bystander scenario that you were referring to, what you're trying to stop is sexual assault and the degrading of the sexes. You don't have the right to tell people what they should find funny or humorous or what they should be conversing about. That's not your place.
It's just like with racism. If you're a white person and you're hanging out with a group of white people and one or two of those white people start making racist comments, if you don't challenge them on that, in a sense, your silence is a form of consent and complicity in their racism.
What the president called locker room talk.
Yeah.
You made an interesting observation about the Golden Globes the other night that I hadn't thought of until you pointed it out.
Yeah, the Golden Globes was an incredible moment. It wasn't just because of the awards for the people who did great work. It was an incredible historical and cultural moment where so many women were coming forward and talking publicly in a very, with a bright spotlight.
All the Golden Globes was a witchcraft ritual. Now let's look up here at the top right-hand corner where it says USA Today. Not one male Golden Globes winner mentioned hashtag Me Too or Time's Up in their speeches. You know why they didn't mention it? Because they didn't believe in it. Instead of trying to castigate them or harass them for not mentioning it, you should thank them. Because what they did was they provided you with a realistic baseline of where you're at. If all the male winners would have gone on stage and said hashtag Me Too or hashtag Time's Up, we have to stand up for this and we cannot tolerate that anymore, then what they would have been doing was feeding into your own delusional sense of quote unquote reality. They would have set you back. You should thank them. The reality of the situation is that the hashtag Me Too movement is the equivalent of fattening up some form of livestock to be slaughtered. The females in Hollywood are all broken. The vast majority of them are monarch children, meaning they've grown up being ritually sexually assaulted, raised up in witchcraft circles, under satanic ritual abuse. And they don't even really know up from down, the vast majority of them. A lot of the males as well, by the way.
About not only experiences that they had, but highlighting the experiences of women all over the world. And it's a great historical moment, but yet all the men who came up to get awards and present didn't say anything. They didn't say anything. And on the red carpet, yes, some of them said, we support women. I'm very proud of her. What we didn't hear from men, either on the arrival or from the stage at all, was men saying, as a man, I'm in a position here because of the bright spotlight to say, as a man, I support women and I'm going to do whatever I can to challenge other men to stand up and speak up and support women and make this a movement that is transcendent.
Why do you think?
Oh, give me a break. The job of the men in Hollywood is to just keep doing what they've been doing, which is being pansexuals and snorting up all the coke in LA. They're not mentally qualified to be ambassadors. And it is very ironic to me that they choose to make ground zero of this social engineering protocol be in Hollywood amongst a group of actors. How could you believe them? They're professional liars.
You think they didn't say anything?
I think a lot of men don't know what to say. I think a lot of men haven't ever heard other men say this, so they haven't seen it modeled. I think a lot of men are afraid of stepping in it. In other words, they don't know what to say, and therefore they worry that they're going to say the wrong thing and they get pushed back. So I think that there's a generous way of thinking about why men didn't say anything.
That truly is some insight into the male mind. If men don't know what to say, they oftentimes won't say anything. The female, on the other hand, will oftentimes not know what to say, but she'll still run her mouth. Why? Because oftentimes women believe that multitude of words are a substitute for knowledge and wisdom.
Not that they're perpetrators, but that they just don't know what to say. And I think part of what we're doing here is just showing men you can talk about this.
And please talk about it.
Yes, please talk about it.
Jackson Katz, good to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Paul,
Well, thank you, Mr. Katz, for creating a platform, for me to do this video and once again display to many of these brothers out here, what they have coming down the pike. And let me also please accentuate this, brothers. You know, when you operate according to civility, you don't need anyone to reteach you how to deal with people. You deal with them according to how they deal with you. And you try to avoid unnecessary confrontations and altercations at all times. So that should automatically tell anyone with even basic cognitive function that you don't put your hands on a woman or rape a woman. Those are the type of things that are not necessary unless you have to defend yourself. And in regards to rape, I mean, give me a break. When you're living in a civilized society, once again, you handle yourself in relationships according to proper ordinances, that being the laws and the statutes and the commandments. Not in an over-righteous manner, but to the best of your ability. That's what makes you upright. But anyway, peace.